Welcome back to Reddit from Reddit. Today we look at AskReddit. 0.1% doesn't seem much. However, what would horribly, catastrophically go wrong if it was off by 0.1%? The strong nuclear force. The force that holds the nuclei of atoms together. If the value changed even slightly, just about everything in the universe would cease to exist as we know it. We'd all become giant gas clouds. A worker at my dad's metal processing plant made an error even smaller than that, I believe. It was a small metal part for machines that make plastics, so they need to be quite precise. They ran out of one metal length, so they were making the part out of a slightly longer metal to start with and just trimming more off of it for the final product. The initial trim left in excess of 100 microns, which even on a plate that is 1 inch in size is just something like 0.003% of the size. A worker failed to double check since they were so accustomed to normal metal size being used and cleared the metal through for final processing. Well, it turns out that the excess 0.003% made the material unusable after it was finished and cost the company over $13,000. Precision machining boggles my mind. As it that a rocket launched by NASA, more specifically Mariner 1, exploded during launch because of the omission of a single hyphen. That's less than 0.0005% of all the characters in the rocket's code. It cost $80 million to fix. Edit, I'm being schooled by AskReddit. I know less than I thought. That's the story that was at the beginning of a chapter of my basic math textbook. Similarly, the space shuttle was one of the most complex systems ever built, with roughly 2.5 million moving parts. A success rate of 99.9% would result in 2,500 parts failing. Carbon content in steel. Steel, such as 1095 steel, are literally just iron with 0.95% carbon in the composition. A difference of 0.1% carbon content would dramatically change the properties of the steel in question. This is true of other chemicals and alloys, but carbon is the most well known. If I recall correctly, molybdenum is added at proportions of like 0.05% and still makes a big difference in properties. The amount of polonium in your body. Unexpected Russian assassin. Trying to follow your mom's instructions. Looks at recipe. How much is a smidge? Centrifuges for nuclear material, of course. The Explain Like I'm 5 version is a virus was left on a USB in the parking lot of the Iranian nuclear program, which some poor schmuck popped into his work computer inside the high-security facility. It only changed a few small numbers to make the centrifuges operate slightly faster than is safe to causing them to rip apart, destroying huge, important portions of some of the most expensive engineering in human history. It does basically nothing to non-nuclear material producing computers, which is good because it has unexpectedly spread all over the world and may even be on your machine. Yep, that was pretty cool, honestly. But really, it wasn't 0.1%. The worm would send pulses to the centrifuges while making it appear normal on the DCS panel. Operators didn't know the centrifuges were revving up and then brake checking. Basically broke the centrifuge's bearing due to fatigue. It exploited an unpatched vulnerability in Siemens SCADA software. Disk space on Windows 10 computers with nearly full disk. Windows 10 often uses several gigabytes of disk space to do things such as install updates, and leaves a safe buffer of just 256 megabytes. Now imagine that some Steam game releases an update, and you have 0 bytes left in seconds. And 0 bytes free means absolute disaster. It's not like you cannot put anything more on it. Absolutely nothing will save on the disk, and any attempt will generate an error. Websites won't load because cache won't write to disk. Drivers will crash because they tried to write some logs. When you turn off your computer, registry will get completely messed up because it was a few bytes too large to store up. Theoretically, antivirus may fail database updates and start deleting everything, and you'll end up having to reinstall Windows. Rocket angled an extra 0.1% to the left at larger distances, that adds up. Aiming for Saturn, found Io instead. The trajectory of a nuclear warhead. Back in the 50s and 60s, that's actually why the warheads were so big. The missiles were only so accurate, so you needed to make a bigger boom in case your missile was off by a mile or two. If 0.1% of all airline flights crashed, there would be around 87 crashes every day. I work in aerospace. I heard once that consumer electronics have a 2% failure rate in the first 2 weeks. If we had a 2% failure rate on every nut and bolt keeping an A320 in the air, nobody would fly. It's not exaggerating to say that everything on an aircraft is inspected at an unbelievably high rate compared to any other manufacturing industry. I'm about to get on a plane. I'm glad that this is not the case. I wonder how many car crashes there are every day. Hot water knob in a shower. I feel you, man. Proton charge plus electron charge. Pretty much all of the universal constants. If they'd abruptly changed by such a high percentage, stuff would cease to exist, violently or just poof away. That comes out to 0, right? What would the effects be if it was minus 0.1% or 0.1%? Hand sanitizer. That last germ is basically the only survivor of a nuclear attack. It'd go from killing 99.9% of bacteria to killing 100%. You thought you were just cleaning your hands because you got some ish on them at the gas station and it smelled odd, but little do you know, you've just brought about the end of times. Your hand-sanitized hands immediately have no surviving microbiotic life, and the purging energies of Purell only continue to surge forth. Bacteria all across the gas station suddenly die in an ever-expanding circle of bacterial annihilation. Your gut microbiome dies, which will lead to horrible nutritional imbalances down the line. Corpses stop decomposing. Everyone sick with the flu suddenly seems fine again. But fine, they are not. It takes days for the purge of all bacterial life to really start to sink in, but it soon does. All plants begin to wither and sag in dead tatters. They had needed bacteria as an essential step in their respiration. Too bad now they're all dead. The dying plant biomass won't rot, as rot is no longer a thing that is possible, or at least not at any time scale we're used to. It'll just stack up endlessly, smothering entire ecosystems in dead waste. All animal wastes begin to accumulate and pile, with no bacterial life to recycle waste into nutrients for the environment. Grazing animals can still eat the dead plant matter because it isn't rotting, but it doesn't matter. Grazers probably die first. Not only are plants they eat no longer reproducing, but they can't even digest cellulose anymore without gut bacteria. They'll slowly wither away and starve to death in fields of dead grass. The food chain had just had a fundamental link severed. Predator animals die next. Their prey is dead, emaciated, and largely nutritionless, and their own digestive systems are poorly functioning with those all-too-missed gut bacteria. Rapidly, entire ecosystems experience total catastrophic collapse. Faced with the total failure of every natural system, humans see their death approaching as sure as the setting sun on the horizon. As the last man dies, he may wonder what horrid act of God brought about the end of times, and what humanity had done to earn such a fate. He never knew the true villain was Purell, and that the first victims of the apocalypse were things he never stopped to value in life. Ironically enough, humans were less than 0.1% of bacteria, mass-wise. The apocalypse had already happened the moment the gas station sanitation wave was unleashed. This was just the dust settling. If 0.1% of all people's hearts stopped, 7.7 million deaths. What's really frightening is, if that is globally distributed, the world wouldn't even take notice. There'd be no noticeable carbon drop-off, a la the Black Death. All we'd have is another year, like 2016, where you notice a lot of funerals. Maybe that's what happened. If it happened all in one place, though, that's a sizable city gone in an instant. The United States Postal Service delivers 187.8 million pieces of first-class mail per year. If 0.1% of those goes missing, that's 187,800 missing items. Did I say per year? I meant per day. Are you sure this isn't already a fact? Anything NASA does. All that space stuff for sure. Accuracy of computers. 1 in every 1,000 bits gets interpreted incorrectly. The stock market would get screwed up, flights would be impractical, and HD videos would be unwatchable. By impractical, I don't mean impossible. I just mean that modern computation helped with keeping things less messy. We could probably work things out with a map, compass, and radio. By unwatchable, I mean that compression and decompression would make entire frames to not get loaded, and in general, the color of many pixels would become different, resulting in a very ugly video. Genetic engineering. You screw with 0.1% of genes, and your baby has banana eyes. Humans initially all had banana eyes. That's where the phrase, keep your eyes peeled, comes from. Blood alcohol content. 0.1% less humans. That is a lot less people. The Leftovers is a TV series about the aftermath of only 2% of the world's population going missing instantly. Super interesting premise. There is something called the 1% rule of internet culture, where it says that only 1% of users on a website are actively creating content, while 99% of people lurk. If that went down by 0.1%, that would be a significant loss to the content most of us enjoy on a daily basis. A 0.1% daily increase in anything would be a disaster. Imagine every day you'd have 0.1% more cats. If there are, I don't know, 100 million cats now, there would be 144 million in a year, 3.8 billion in 10 years, 150 billion in 20, a million billion cats in 100 years. We'd all be knee deep in a sea of cats. Or there would be 0.1% more cats killed in shelters. Moving images on a Word document. See that nice document you have over there? It'd be a shame if you moved it at all. Programming. A small bug in code, like a spelling error, could theoretically bring down your application. 0.1% of your average application's code could be hundreds or thousands of lines of code. In the 2000 US presidential election between George W. Bush and Al Gore, it came down to what was basically one state in the Electoral College. Whoever took Florida would have enough Electoral College votes to put them in the White House. Until the result in Florida was known, neither side could claim victory. And Florida was close. Like, really close. After recounts and a contentious Supreme Court decision, it was determined that Bush had received 2,912,790 votes to Gore's 2,912,253. In short, the presidency was decided by just 537 votes out of 5.8 million. Not a margin of 0.1%, but of 0.01%. Depending on your view of the Bush administration, that may very well count as going horribly, catastrophically wrong. And if people changed their vote, as opposed to just more people voting, it was actually 269 votes that decided the presidency. On a related note, what if Al Gore and George Bush shared 0.1% more body mass than they currently do? Like the tips of their penises were fused together in a permanent docking scenario, and they could pee back and forth forever. That'd also probably have some implications on the election. If all my poops left 0.1% of them inside of me, I'd have a full poop left inside of me roughly every 3 years. I'd be a walking septic tank by now. But then you poop that out and only leave 0.1% of that, which only comes to a full poop every 3 millennia. Gravity. Pulled to the left by 0.1%, and all of engineering is going to have a bad time. The amount of people that stay dead when they die. And that's the end of this Ask Reddit. 0.1% doesn't seem much. However, what would horribly, catastrophically go wrong if it was off by 0.1%? Is there anything in your life that would go horribly, catastrophically wrong if it was off by 0.1%? Let us know down in the comments. Also, while you're down there, don't forget to hit the like button, get subscribed to the channel, and share this video with your friends to talk about catastrophes from 0.1% changes. Thank you for watching this Reddit from Reddit video, and we will see you in the next one.